Let's jump over to this one real quick. So Bill Connelly came out with his S&P plus and returning production. Overall, I have the picture right here. Returning production, Texas, I believe, is in the hundreds. So is Georgia.
Yep.
Usually that is not a good thing, guys, but there are certain outliers every year. So just running through the SEC real quick. Auburn is 22nd. Alabama's 35th. Mississippi State 37th. Which, I mean, see, this is the double-edged sword of that. They're a really bad football team.
Yeah.
Do you really want people returning that were on a bad football team?
Not all returning production is good production, right?
Yes, exactly. LSU 38th, Missouri 51st, Kentucky 52nd, Tennessee 58th, Arkansas 64th, South Carolina 71st. And then this is where we drop down to 3 of the top 4 teams from last year. Texas 103rd, Georgia 105th, and Ole Miss 113th. So what do those numbers tell you, Gerald? And is it a concern moving forward for Texas?
That number tells me that Texas sent 14 guys to the NFL Combine, right? That's what it tells me, right? Start at QB1, running back 2, wide receiver 1 and 2, tight end 1, right? On the offensive side, that is all of the major skill positions turning over. We knew that. It doesn't really tell me anything new. Again, this is not – Bill Connelly is one of the smartest guys out there when it comes to advanced stats, but, like, that's why looking at returning production is tough, because we knew that Texas going into this was going to have a recycle of the talent, right? Quinn Ewers, been a 3-year starter. He's gone. QB1. Got Jaden Blue, who was a running back 2 this year. Again, Golden, Bond, Helm, all those guys, offensive production. We knew that Texas was going to have a refresh on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, you've got Jahdae Barron, who's gone. Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins. All those guys, David Benda, right? Barron Sorrell, those guys gone, right? All of those guys were on the top of the list for Texas production a year ago. We knew this was going to be something. And again, not all returning production is good production, right? If your team sucks, those are the same guys that sucked a year ago. So, like, there's no two ways around saying that. But for Texas, it's not anything new. Like, we knew new quarterback. We knew that the running back position was going to be something to turn over again. And for Texas, getting CJ Baxter back instead of having Jaden Blue back there might be a step up. We'll talk about that maybe in a couple of weeks, right? Wide receiver is the one that I probably have the most concern about when it comes to returning production, but this is nothing new to me.
No, and it's kind of piggybacking off the last topic of, hey, if you're trusting this staff to develop talent, then this shouldn't be that big of an issue. Like Sark said, it's a good thing when you're sending these guys out the door and they're going in the first, second round of the NFL draft, and then you're bringing in new guys and you just keep doing the same cycle. We saw Alabama do that. We saw Georgia do that. We see Ohio State do that. To win a national championship, that is how you do it. Guys, there isn't any team I've ever seen where it's a one-hit wonder team of, if you're not like recycling players like that, you have to do that to be at that level year in and year out. You have to. And no one wins at the first bite of the apple. Alabama didn't win at the first bite of the apple. Georgia didn't win at the first bite of the apple. Ohio State took them for a long time. As their fans before this national championship, they were tired of it. They were said, when are we going to knock the door down? But if you continue to produce NFL talent, eventually you will knock the door down. It will happen. That is the key. So I think that's a really good thing. And like you said, it does matter. Like Mississippi State returning production ahead of us, that doesn't mean they're going to have a better team, because guess what? A lot of those guys weren't that good that are returning. Oklahoma, I actually didn't even name the top 4. It's A&M, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Florida. I mean, I don't know about Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. I honestly don't even know about A&M. And a lot of it, too, is your returning production from quarterback. Your quarterback is a big, big chunk of that. So if you're losing your quarterback and you don't have anyone filling in, it's a big issue. But we have Arch Manning filling in, and I'm very confident. Are there certain positions I'm not as confident about? Absolutely. I agree with you. I think if I'm ranking confidence levels, my least confident rooms are probably defensive tackle, tight end, and then wide receiver. I think there's a bigger gap between defensive tackle, tight end, and then I think there's a gap to wide receiver for me. But those other two I am a little bit worried about, because again, last year, defensive tackle, we had Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton waiting in the wings. I don't know who that's going to be this year, because I haven't seen any of these guys play at any level yet at Texas. So that's going to be very interesting. Now, do we have the talent to get there? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, this is going to be a young team. And I think that's the big concern for like week 1 Ohio State. But again, where does Ohio State rank on that list? Pretty darn low, right? So both of these teams are going to be turning it over pretty significantly. But Texas has done a good job of creating depth, right? Texas is a very, very deep team and a very talented team that is deep. They may not have a ton of production. They may not have a ton of snaps yet, but these are guys that everybody in the country wanted coming out of high school. So I have trust and I have faith that they've been able to get these guys where they need. And if you look at the most recent coaching hires, right? The most recent coaching hires that Texas has had, you think about defensive tackle coach, you think about wide receiver coach, now you think about hiring Dwayne Akina back there in the secondary. Those are guys who are not really focused on recruiting. Those are guys that are focused primarily on development and teaching. And so Texas's focus really has been, I think, in my opinion, on focusing on development, getting these guys ready, giving these guys the skills that they need to step up when you have these big drops in production. And guess what? Next year, Texas will be near the top because they're going to return quarterback 1, wide receiver 1, running back 1, right? They're going to return a bunch of those guys. So Texas will be a top 5 team this time next year. So it feels like a much ado about nothing. And again, returning production, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I remember looking into this last year, talking about where teams rank in returning productions that win a national championship. There's a big range for that, guys. Would you rather have your team be super talented in returning? Absolutely. You have those on rare occasions. I think you saw that with the 2023 Michigan team. I think that's the best example of it, where literally like every player came back from the previous 2 teams that had made the college football playoff, but that's super rare. That usually doesn't happen. I think Ohio State had that this year as well, where they're like, let's run it back. Those are rare instances, and I think you might see that more with NIL, so that's going to be interesting moving forward. But before that, it really didn't happen. Like, if you watch those Alabama teams, they were constantly like in the 30s to 40s, and then one year they'd be in the 90s, and then one year they'd be at the top. So it is what it is. If you're going to win a national championship again, you just got to continue to produce NFL talent. I also wanted to talk about this. I'm a bad host. I did not give Gerald the information about the S&P Plus, but I wanted to read this list real quick. So S&P Plus is basically an efficiency stat, and it's looking into the future. How will you continue to look into the future efficiency-wise? And that's how they rank them. So the top 10, I'll run it down from 10 to 1. LSU is number 10 going into next year. Ole Miss is 9. Tennessee is 8. Texas is 7. So I was surprised by that. Oregon is 6. Notre Dame is 5. Georgia is 4. Penn State is 3. Alabama is 2. And Ohio State is 1. So out of those 10, I guess, who is like the biggest surprise, or do you disagree with any of the teams ranked ahead of Texas?
Not necessarily. I mean, Ohio State feels weird because they're much like Texas in a position where they're turning over the entirety of their offensive roster effectively. Outside, they've got the 2 best wide receivers in the country coming back, but quarterback, offensive line, running back, that's a whole retread. In Texas's trouble, and I actually tweeted at Bill Connelly about this after the bowl game. Like, Texas's special team score in their S&P drags them down pretty significantly. So that's part of the reason why they're so low, is because let's just put it out there. Special teams kind of sucked this year. So the special teams grade was pretty abysmal. So that's part of the reason why Texas got dragged down in that. But I don't necessarily am I surprised? No, I think, Vegas would probably say that Texas has the best odds to win a national championship. All the podcasts I listen to say Texas is one of the picks for a national champion. But I think those are all the teams that can compete. That list of top 10, I would be shocked if more than one of them was not in the college football playoff next year. So I think that, to me, is just a grouping of probable CFP teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If I had to like nitpick, I would say Oregon kind of surprised me. And Alabama, number 2, is way too high to me. I don't give a crap about, honestly, any returning production, any efficiency stat. After what I watched last year, I have and they're replacing their quarterback. And listen, you may not like Jalen Milroe, but I've watched Ty Simpson and I have not been impressed. So I just completely disagree with that. And also, does he weigh special teams equally with offense and defense?
I'm not sure how he calculates it, but I know it's in there.
Okay. Yeah, because if that's equal, that's asinine to me, because it should be like, I don't know, 70% offense and defense, 30% special teams, in my opinion. It should be a little bit less.
Yeah, it's like a 40-40-20 situation.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way you can say special teams is equally important, in my opinion. Now, I will agree, you can't be disastrous on special teams, and we were bordering on that this year. We were pretty damn close. Like Silas Bolden, if he doesn't make 2 or 3 of those catches, we're talking about disastrous special teams.
Yeah.
And that's one thing too. Like, we have to get better. Punting game, I'm actually not that concerned after watching Michael Kern, and we have the other guy, Jack Bowmeister. Geez, I can't say his last name.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, but the kicker, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I'm not very confident in that.
I would be shocked if we saw Sideshow Bob trotted out there week 1. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go with him in Ohio State, and like when they sent Will Stone out there and he kicked that extra point, my heart was going crazy because like I've never seen this guy kick in a game. I have no idea what to expect here. So we'll have to see, because to me, it took a long time to get to that Will Stone point, which I don't really love, because if you liked him, I think you would have got there earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this is something that Sark has said, though. He's kind of loyal to a fault, right? And I think he gave Bert Auburn multiple chances because Sark is loyal to his guys, right? And I get that, but also, like, you can't, it's not really a nice guy business, right? It's not really something that's going to help you out. If special teams is costing you games, like it nearly did in a couple of spots, like you gotta shrug the nice guy off and make a tough call.
Yeah, we just have to be good this year. Again, like Gerald says, we don't have to be great. Just don't lose games for us.
Just don't suck.
Don't suck. So that does it for that segment. We really appreciate you guys being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe.